Hello and welcome to the Bigger, Braver Life Show. I'm your host, Angela Marie Williams. As an entrepreneur and success coach, my mission is to empower you to realize your dreams and potential through transformational experiences. The purpose of this show is to inspire your positive change by learning from a community of those paving the way to a bigger, braver life. Hey everyone, welcome to the Bigger, Braver Life Show. I am your host, Angela Williams. I am a licensed clinical social worker and your success coach. And I'm so excited to have you here on this episode today. My mission, my purpose for being in this world is to help you achieve your greatest potential, your gifts, your vision, and share that with the world. And I'm so happy to have this podcast and to welcome amazing other colleagues and business owners and people sharing their stories of how they're living their bigger, braver life. Today, we are welcoming Milissa Bradshaw. She is a fellow coach, and I'm so excited to have you on the show today, Milissa. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, super excited to just have this conversation and be here and share. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So why don't you go ahead, take it away, introduce yourself, and tell us more about the work you do in this world.
Yeah, so I coach warrior women is how I like to describe the women that I work with, women that really are either experiencing in the past or in the present some kind of inner conflict with spiritual, mental, physical, emotional conflict. We really go deep into creating love, whether that's personal love, love in relationships, peace, power, and so that we can create a sense of mastery within an optimal life in business and personal life.
So tell us how, first of all, how you are living your bigger, braver life.
Yeah. So actually, as I was saying that is what I do. It's like, that is what I am. I'm all about mastery. I'm all about leading with self-mastery and being an embodiment of my work, obviously, as we all are, but really leading with peace, really leading with compassion and love and grace. And that's really how I cultivate my power. Coming from, in my past, a lot of powerlessness, dealing with trauma, depression, a lot of things that have manifested into physical manifestations like chronic illness and so on and so forth. A lot of the people that I work with that have experienced such things that are even like, creating these businesses, and then they find that it's like not all about the money, right? Where it's like, ooh, what about that peace, or what about that intimacy within their relationships? And so that's really what brought me to what I do and why it's so important to me, is because it's about the mastery. It's about the end of the day, like what feels good. Are we proud of how we showed up? Am I proud of being present as a mother? Am I proud of like, I didn't exhaust all of my energy and then my husband's like, oh, right? Like nothing left for me. And so as we've I know like you can relate to this, as we're in like so many different containers, programs, masterminds, learning, teachings, and we see in our clients as well, it's like we may be buying into something that we think that we desire, or we do desire, whether it's money, but then the deeper desire is really like a sense of peace. And so that is something that I'm very passionate about, is just like creating that sense of peace and taking people through that and just being the walking embodiment of that. And I find that it's like not necessarily giving the permission, right? Because we don't have to give permission, because if we're coming from a place of needing that validation, obviously that's not right, but just leading in the sense of doing things like morning practices to calm my nervous system, leading in the way of honoring myself, in the way of, if I'm not feeling well, canceling my call or rescheduling it and showing my clients that that's okay. Years ago, I wouldn't have done that. And so I think where I am at in leading a braver life, right, is having the courage to honor myself, having the courage, having the bravery to put myself first, and having those boundaries in place to truly like lean back as that goddess and show like my husband, show my son, show my family, show my friends, show my clients that it is okay to say no. It's okay to have that bravery in you and, turn down the foods that don't make you feel good, to turn down the environment, the people, all of those things like that literally like gave me goosebumps. It's like, and the more that you do it, it's freeing, it's liberating.
I love that. Thank you. I want to kind of piece apart a little bit. I think there's a lot fueling even the fear or the expectation or the belief that we cannot say no, I think, especially as women. So if you wouldn't mind just to dig into that a little bit, what are those common beliefs maybe that your clients have? I know my clients have similar ones and I'll chime in too, but where we are programmed that we have to give so much of ourselves. We have to pour all of our energy, all of our time in, that we can't say no. And saying no means something deeper than protecting ourselves. It's, that we aren't able or capable or whatever. Tell me what you think about that.
Well, and the thing is too, is a lot of times it can be people that are more experienced or have been in the industry of healing. And sometimes it's like those little shifts or those little tricky things that sneak in that we aren't aware of until we're being guided, or even a conversation like this that I'm sure will have ahas, or your audience is listening to it. It's like, wait a minute, I didn't even realize that I'm still doing that. My son will literally tell me, he'll say, Mom, you could have said no, right? Like I still do that. Like I'm like this boundary queen as I imagine myself to be. And then there's times where I'm tired or I still find myself doing for him. And he's like thinking, I'm fine. Like you could have said no, Mom. And then, so I think it really comes from that expectation, whether somebody is still in that perfectionism place, or the expectation, whether it's coming from self or the expectation that's been placed on them from society or religion or parental, being growing up. It's the expectation that we feel that we have to live up to. And so it's the fear of judgment. Ultimately, we're thinking that we're having that fear of judgment from other people, whether it's a parent, whether it's a spouse, whether it's our children. We don't want to let people down because of what we have lived to, but ultimately it's the judgment upon ourselves. And that's where I really help people get deeper into that love and that compassion for self, and what creates that peace and that sense of like the power. I think if people are still kind of hesitant to being able to say no, we have to kind of go a little bit deeper into self-love and compassion and grace, because there's a reason for it. So like I said, even though we're coaches and we're so powerful and we're doing the do, if you're still showing up as this powerful leader or this powerful wife or this powerful mother, but there's this other area in your life that you're just not that that one person you're still not saying no to, whether it's your mom or maybe your grandma or maybe the person at church or maybe whomever it is, got to go a little bit deeper, because ultimately we are number one, like we're leading.
Something you said I wanted to talk a little bit more about too, that we haven't really talked about on the show yet, is that role that organized religion practices may play in the forming and developing of these expectations that have to be met, and this judgment piece. I know that when I grew up in the Catholic Church, there was a lot of, rigid rules and expectations, and some of that didn't make sense to me. And some of that felt so contradictory, because it was like, the teachings were to love everyone and accept everyone, but there was so much judgment, and it really turned me off, because it's like, wait a second, this is so much hypocrisy. How is this genuine and aligned? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And I didn't grow up in church, although I went to church throughout time in my life, but I didn't necessarily grow up in church. But how I can relate to that is one of my great gifts is compassion. I've always had a really strong compassion for other people, and in places where I've held back because it didn't quite maybe make other people feel comfortable, or it didn't make sense, or it's like, there was that judgment. It's just normal to judge people that did wrong, or I never really saw that. Like people saw that in me and I never understood it because it was just compassion. And so the judgment piece is like, we are taught to judge. We are taught to like, you are part of this group, you're a part of that group. Where I can relate to that is I grew up in two different homes, and how I want to connect this back to. So I never felt part of something, right? So a lot of people that are going into religion, they're going just like any kind of thing, like a network marketing group or a sisterhood group or a program or whatnot. We're going to feel a part of something, to feel belonging. So when I would go back and forth from this parent to that parent, I related to that a lot because it was so polar opposite. It was like night and day. I think a lot of people just think that that is what is supposed to be, and they don't speak up. Whereas I always knew that I was like a little bit in the mix, like total complete opposites. This is my mom's, this is my dad's. I was like, who the hell am I? Right? Like, who am I? You guys are complete different people. How did you even make me? So I had to kind of figure out for myself. And so that's where my brave life began, the whole self-mastery, basically, because it was, well, you guys are doing your thing. I'm going to have to figure this out.
When we are leading groups and movements and, feeling called to do the work that we do, especially working with a lot of other people, I think it tends to go back to our origins, our beginnings. And as we're growing up, we're seeing this feels this way or this feels this way. And I think we both speak to our clients about that intuition, that intuitive piece of us, that we have this inner knowledge and this inner knowing. And being able to say, for me, going back to the religion example, it was like, something's not right here. And something's not right here for me, although that was what my family did. That's what I was, expected to do, and show up to church and do all these things. And there was a lot of perfectionism and judgment and those type of themes kind of woven in. But for me now, and as I am supporting people here and now, it's being able to shed the layers of that fear of judgment, that not being able to question things, that the expectations that may or may not be realistic, that alignment of what you say and what you do. And I work with a lot of clients who feel oppressed by, some organized groups such as religions or things like that, who have these really high expectations and they do act out in judgments. And I think we carry that. Again, with societal programming, with our groups that we're in, with our families. For some of us, it's outlined. It's like, here's what you do and here's what you don't do. And for you, it sounds like you had a very much like, I have this and this over here, and now I get to create my own. But that, I'm sure that process came with its own trial and error and confusion, and really wanting that feeling of that alignment of your own.
Yeah, it's interesting how we all how we come, right? That's exactly it. It's like finding your own and knowing what like doesn't feel good. And so back to like being able to say no, right? Like this doesn't feel good. How you're living doesn't feel good. How you're living doesn't feel good. I'm going to have to figure this out. So that's like living the braver life, right? And so being able to trust your intuition. And it's like, that's so often we all have that, right? Like right here available for us right now. But because of the conditioning, because of whether it's like the upbringing of how everybody else lives, we doubt ourselves. So we're doubting ourselves. And it's so if we just go back into what feels good, it's easy as that. Like I really try to simplify what I do with my clients. It's like, what feels good, period. What feels good. And that's our intuition. And it's like, well, if that religion don't feel good, or if that mom don't feel good, or what dad's doing don't feel good, or what your husband, or whatever it is, right? It's like the people, places, and things, allow yourself to shift on a day-to-day basis to get into the alignment that's going to take you to a higher place to continue to up-level your life.
That's a really great point. Going deeper into the intuition and the feeling good, I think to go a little bit deeper into that, there are some things that we choose that may feel good temporarily, but maybe aren't in the long run. So how would you differentiate that for our listeners, for your clients? How do you differentiate the things that are maybe the temporary feel good versus the intuition, the things that are really truly meant for you?
Yeah. And I can really attest to that very well because I've had a history of hard drugs. I started my first addiction with food as a young child. I put myself on my diet at like 7 years old. I yo-yoed with food and then went to drugs and alcohol. So even now we go to instant gratification. We're stressed out and we're going to go to the sugar or the carbs or just overeating. For some people, it may be binging on social media or doing whatever. And so it's like that instant gratification could be even shopping and not to say that that's bad, right? Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. It's all about the meaning that we give it, right? And so going from that is like ego and soul. And not to say that ego is a bad thing as well, because ego has kept me alive for a long time. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of where it is. It's like, is it faith? Do you trust it? Does it feel good? Is it like a hell yes? Do you trust that this car is going to get you to the grocery store? Or are you getting in that car and saying, well, it does have 4 tires and the one's kind of flat, and you're justifying it. So that's how I like to share. If you have to justify something, that's not really a good sign that it's intuition. It's more like kind of ego coming in. So it's a real quick tool that we can get into. It's like soul versus ego, intuition. So it's kind of like when you're standing there looking at a piece of cake, right? Where it's like, well, I did eat good all week, or whatever, where it's like, if you're not shaming yourself or feeling bad about it and you're having a birthday party with your girlfriends and you're celebrating, you're not even thinking twice. You're like, heck yes, I'm celebrating. It's like, I'm just going to do this with no guilt, no shame. But if you're sitting there shaming on yourself, that ego's attacking you, and there's some things to work through there.
Definitely. So as a therapist and a coach, it's important, I think, as I'm listening to folks that are coming in, it's okay, is this a deep thing that we need to maybe look at therapy for versus coaching for? And how do you kind of draw that line maybe to guide our listeners? Like if they're kind of struggling with some things, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Because I think a lot of this stuff too is protective mechanisms that are coming from a place of that hurt or that past trauma. So even though they're not healthy in the now, right, that's kind of what it's showing up as today. So what are your thoughts on that?
And that's a really good question, because for me, on the other side, I did psychotherapy for 25 years. I started in first grade up until, I don't know, a handful of years ago. I don't find that I work with anybody that couldn't use that side of like, that kind of work, right? So it's kind of like, it goes hand in hand. It doesn't matter if you're making $1 million. It doesn't matter how pretty your house is or how pretty you are. There's nobody that on a day-to-day basis that can't go a little bit deeper. It's just in the allowing of it, like allowing and not making it like, oh my gosh, I'm going so deep. I have to go deep today. I have to heal today, where it's just the reframing of it. It's just like allowing those little micro shifts and the little allowing somebody to help you have a different perspective. And that's where the big shift happens.
It sounds like you are saying that you think your clients and the people you work with could benefit from both.
Yeah. Also, it's going to take the right practitioner, coach, healer. I guess I feel like that just because of my experience and where I'm at. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do and how I deliver my services in one-to-one. And I go a little bit more deeper.
Yeah. So anytime you pick a person to support you, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a coach, whether it's a healer, whatever, a guide, a mentor, whatever you want to call them, it's about finding that right fit, making sure that they have the tools and experience and all that good stuff that you want, right? The can help you produce that transformation that you're looking for. So I definitely agree with that.
One thing I can say to that with the experiences that I've had with people that I've worked with on my end, investing in. And if you're somebody listening to this, and if you've been to therapy and you're maybe first time looking into, finding a coach, or you have been, working with coaches, the thing is find somebody that's able to hold space for your darkness, let's say, or whatever you feel comfortable calling it, your shadow, your inner child, your darkness, whatever it may be. And then to be able to just hold space for your higher self, all in the same session, all in the same breath, all without feeling bad about it. Like you get to be your crazy mess. And then all in the next day, you get to be talking about your wildest dreams. And I found many times there are people that can't hold that. There are people that aren't comfortable, aren't able, aren't experienced, they're just, they want to shift you right fast to the higher part. To whereas it's very important to be able to hold space for what's happening, to be able to calibrate to higher frequencies, to be able to have a perspective shift.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, and sometimes it may look like getting a specialist for both. I've seen that work as well, where, you can really dive in over here into the previous stuff, the trauma, et cetera, right, in a specific way. And then you can come over here and build, so I agree with you. Whatever you do, you need to find the fit that feels comfortable and that person's able to support you in the way that you want and need. Coaches, therapists, I don't care, who you are, we all have our own stuff too, and our own limitations and expertise and all of that. So 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had 2 of my one-to-one clients that actually go to therapy as well.
Yeah, that's great. How are you defining success for yourself?
Hands down, success for me is when I hold and maintain that emotional mastery, especially in my household. And obviously throughout conversation with clients and who I am, but especially like in my household. And when I hit the bed at night and I feel proud that I did not freak out when the milk spilled, that I did not lose that, because ultimately I'm here to end generational trauma. And I'm here to show my son that life gets to be different and it doesn't have to be those two, opposites. And so he doesn't have to go through the turbulence that I went through to get to where I am. And so giving him a beginning. But success to me is peace. Success to me is peace and joy and love, and especially self-freedom and love and acceptance for self without having judgment.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah. I asked that question to almost everyone, I think, on the show. I don't know when I started asking it, but the answers are all so wildly different. And that's why I love asking that question, because it looks different for everybody, and that is totally okay. And I love that. You mentioned that you're here to end that generational trauma. And, from everything you said, it's like you are living a bigger, braver life by doing the hard work. It's, knowing that there's this generational trauma, you want to be the end of it all. And you want to promote that growth in future generations. You want to bring peace. You want to help others with that emotional mastery, because we're on the same page with this. It's not only about achieving that for us, but it's about helping other people achieve that for themselves and their future generation. That's what we are here to do. So I think all of that is so, so extremely brave. And thank you for sharing all of that with us today. Milissa, what would your final thoughts or advice that you would give to people who might be trying to end generational trauma, who might be trying to build their bigger, braver life, and maybe coming up with some challenges?
What just came to mind is follow people that you admire. Find a couple people that you admire and stay close. And whether you're able to invest or not, stay close and keep close to your desires, and don't give up on them. Know that if there's people like us here that can do what we've done, that you can do it too, whatever it is. It's really as simple as that. Don't fall into the instant gratification that you are going to be perfect and you're going to, find that inner peace or that body or that relationship or the money or whatever today, because I will be a broken record for this. I've been on this self-mastery journey since I've been a child. So
thank you so much. Yes. I think that for folks sometimes who are faced with this situation in life where they're like, this has got to change. I want something bigger. I want something better, not only for myself, but for other people around me. Sometimes that can feel overwhelming. That can feel really big. What would be your baby first step for them?
Reach out. Reach out, and don't be afraid or embarrassed or ashamed or think that you're alone, because there's a lot of us, especially on social media, that we put our pretty pictures out, and you don't know what's behind, until we have these deep, intimate conversations. So reach out. Like, you never know how one conversation can land you some opportunity. The bravery is reaching out to somebody about a question, just reaching out like, hey, how'd you do that? Just reach out to somebody that you have that intuition. Like, I admire what she's doing. How did she do that? How do you feel that way? How'd you look that way? How do you just reach out?
I love that. Yeah. It's that connectedness that's going to really help us work together, build each other up, and see that change for good in the future generation. So that's beautiful. Thank you so much. And for sharing all of that, because it's so important for people to hear. We have so many different folks with so many different stories. And this is the whole point of this podcast, is so that people can hear the diversity of stories and situations and circumstances, and how people can still be in the shit of it, right? And like make a change for the better, for not only them, but other people. Another resource I'm going to add to this is, if you have this vision, this dream calling you, or this, decision to make a bigger, braver life, to do something different, to break, end that generational trauma, be the first millionaire in your family, start your business, whatever that may be. I'm going to leave a link to a free guidebook. You're going to create your bravest life vision. It'll be the very first steps to guide you with that. So it's not just writing goals, right? It's about creating that brave vision for yourself, your future, and for all of those that happen to come across you. So check that in the show notes. And Milissa, tell us how folks can work with you.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. Right now, I'm really excited about a monthly deepening membership, which I just had a call today, which was fabulous. It's called Honored, and it's really a good place. It's a safe place to come and integrate, feel safe, create stronger boundaries, up your standards, just so much. I'm also doing virtual VIP days. And then, of course, I have high level one-to-one.
Awesome. So actually, can you explain what a VIP day is for folks listening?
Yeah. And that is really just like a super deep intensive where we'll do a call to prepare for our day. And then we do 3 hours and then a follow-up call with Voxer support as well. And it's basically tailored to the individual of whatever's going on, whatever the desires are. It's tailored to the individual. So what it is, it's finding what it is that we can deepen your self-trust and ignite that inner power so that you can really deepen the self-love and really lead your life of your inner goddess, right? So that you are in true embodiment.
Beautiful. Thank you. So many great ways to work with Milissa. You're going to see all that in the show notes to get your guide to create your bravest life vision. And we will see you in the next episode.